Well, hello everyone, and welcome in for the first ever installment of the Salina Post Sports Friday Night Preview. Tyler Hanney and Devin, Hanney alongside you as we take a look at matchups happening across the state of Kansas, specifically here in our area, and get you ready for an exciting Friday night under the lights. Devin, we got another great week of high school football coming your way, and a couple of good broadcasts as well.
It's almost like you get so souped up for Friday night, right? The opening Friday night, it's new, everybody's undefeated, it's like, let's go. But, I feel like it's Christmas all over again here in week number 2. We have some really great matchups to talk about, and it's like we're just starting over all over again here in week number 2.
Absolutely. Well, and for a lot of teams that took a loss last week, it's a chance to bounce back to 500. For teams that picked up a win, it's a chance to really solidify themselves upon the upper echelon. And with that, let's go ahead and take a look at what's going on here in our area. Salina Central, fresh off a victory over Salina South. They will be on the road at Ark City. Salina South gets to stay at Salina Stadium, but boy, they're going to have their hands full. They play Maize South coming up this week. We've got a broadcast here on KINA that'll see southeast of Salina on the road at Clay Center, and we've also got a broadcast on Salina Post. It's the Battle of Dickinson County between Abilene and Chapman. Abilene holds serve and holds host in that game this season. Ellsworth will take on Republic County in a battle of all NCAA foes. Meanwhile, in a battle of Lions, it's the Minneapolis Lions against the Lions, and getting down into 1A, Sacred Heart looking to bounce back in a battle with Plainville, and Bennington with a chance to get their first win here at the 11-man level over Remington. The last couple of games on our scoreboard come from the world of 8-man football, where El Saline will take on Osborne and Solomon will take on Wakefield. And Devin, aside from some of the games that maybe we're covering, or maybe even some of the games that we're covering, what are the contests this week on the slate that really jump off the page at you?
Top of the list is Abilene Chapman, right? That's our game of the week on Salina Post. You'll have the call on that. And it's so iconic of a rivalry. It's the oldest football game west of the Appalachian Mountains in the United States. It is the very first high school in what used to be Dickinson County Community High School that is now Chapman High. It's Abilene. They're 12 miles down the road. You don't even get on I-70. You go down Old 40. Old 40 Highway connects the two schools. It's green. It's orange. It's two colors that absolutely do not mix. And it's a rivalry that, man, it's always good. Whether these two teams are struggling or whether they're really, really good, it's always a game that just kind of grabs your attention. And I think it's going to do that again this year. Abilene, rough start on the road, understandably, at Clay Center. Clay Center's tough this year. Chapman got a win with a new head coach, and Jason Grider is one of those guys. He has bounced around just a little bit over the last couple of years. He was at Halstead for a long, long time, so he's not new to high school level at all, but he went to Bethel when his kids were in school there, was on the coaching staff there for the Threshers. Now, since they're done, he goes back looking for a high school job. It just so happened Kurt Webster moved on. He went to the Kansas City area to coach, so slides in Jason Grider at Chapman. I think it's a perfect fit. One thing I know about Coach Grider, he will have the Fighting Irish playing defense, and he will have them not making very many mistakes in a run-oriented offense.
Well, and we'll have a chance to hear from both Coach Grider and Coach Nix a little bit later on here in the show, and that's one of the big things we're looking forward to bringing you every single week with this show, a chance to hear from some of our local area coaches ahead of Friday night. Devin, the other matchup that I think really sticks out to me is actually El Saline taking on Osborne. You want to talk about two teams that got off to a weird start? Osborne went 9-2 last season. They made a deep run into the 8-man playoffs. El Saline did the same. You remember, El Saline was a Final Four team in the 8-man Division I playoff last year. Both teams took a loss early in the season. Now, granted, for Osborne, that came at the hands of Hoxie, but for El Saline, they took a week 1 loss in the 8-man world. That came at the hands of Hanover. That is a high-profile matchup, and more importantly, it's two teams trying to get back on the right side of things after falling in week 1. A lot on the line down in Brookville for El Saline and Osborne. We'll go ahead and step away. We'll take a short break, but when we come back, we'll hear some interviews. We'll talk with head coach Jason Grider, also head coach Brad Nix, and get you ready for the Battle of Dickinson County. That is coming up next. You're tuned in here for the Salina Post Sports Friday Night Preview, and you're catching it right here on KINA. Welcome back in here on our Salina Post Sports Friday Night Preview as we get you ready for all the latest action here across North Central Kansas, and we've got a dandy for you tonight. We'll be covering on our game of the week, Abilene and Chapman. It's the battle for Dickinson County, the oldest rivalry west of the Mississippi, and it should be a good one. We had a chance earlier this week to sit down and talk with both coaches. You can hear the full extended interviews on our pregame show. That'll be airing at 6:40 p.m. tonight on Salina Post. We first sat down with Brad Brad Nix, fifth-year head coach of the Abilene Cowboys, to talk a little bit more about his squad and what this rivalry means to the Cowboys. Abilene and Chapman is a rivalry that, really needs no introduction. It's the oldest rivalry west of the Mississippi. I know every game on your schedule is important, but obviously, does it feel like there's a little more juice behind this one every year?
Yeah, for sure. And that's what's exciting about Kansas football. That's exciting. What's exciting about high school football? You have that rivalry. And for us, it's Chapman, and I know our kids are pumped about it. They're excited about it. They're ready to go. I think a little bit of it is you do get a little snake bit on that first game. You want to get back on that horse and go. And so I think that's part of it, but it being Chapman week, I think that we've been a little bit more intense, a little bit more, ready to go because, we want to win your rivalry game. And we know how much the game matters, not to just us, but to our community and to our school, to our alumni, and so that's kind of a big deal. And so these kids get that, and they're excited. They're excited. Chapman, they're a good football team, and we're going to have to play really well on Friday.
Well, and you guys have now beaten Chapman in each of the last 2 meetings. They held the series for the last 4 years prior to that. First of all, how does it feel to have the shoe kind of on the other foot? And what is it like to know that, you guys now have the opportunity to really control this rivalry if you can win for a third year here?
Yeah, it's great, and I'm happy for the kids. Those first couple of years, we were trying to get things going, and it's tough, because I remember community members coming up to me, I'd be in the grocery store and somebody come up and be like, "Hey man, it's Chapman week, be ready to go." And we didn't have all the bullets in the gun, back then, but we tried, and the kids fought hard, and these last couple of years, we've been a little bit just a little bit more physical. Been more ready to go, and the kids have done a great job. And so, it's nice to be in a better position where you feel like you can have some success. And but at the same time, again, Chapman's 1-0. They got the big win last week, and so our kids are focused on that, and they know that it's not going to be an easy one, but they know it's an important one. And so that's how they've approached it this week.
We also had the opportunity to sit down with head coach Jason Grider, who comes over from Bethel College to coach the Chapman Fighting Irish this year, replacing Kurt Webster. He has had a couple of things to sort out early in the year, including who would play quarterback, but things looked awfully good in week 1 for the Chapman Fighting Irish as their defense was able to will them to a 10-7 victory over a really, really good Smith Center team. Coach Grider and his gang will have an opportunity to take this rivalry series back, and if they can get the victory, it would be the first win for Chapman over Abilene in 3 years. Chapman held the rivalry series for 4 years prior to that. Again, we had a chance to sit down and get Coach Grider's thoughts on the rivalry and on the matchup earlier this week. Abilene Chapman goes back so far. Even as a new coach to the rivalry, can you already kind of just feel what this game means to these guys and to these two communities?
Yeah, we're handling it like a regular game week, but I know the guys are excited. I'm sure Abilene's excited too. I know that both communities are fired up for it, and I'm excited to be a part of it. To be the newbie involved. I'm excited to see what this is all about, and I'm looking forward to pregame and obviously the game itself of what all it brings, and it's always exciting to be a rivalry game, but obviously it's pretty darn cool that it's one of the oldest rivalries in the country. So I'm excited to be involved in it.
Every rivalry kind of ebbs and flows over the years, especially at the high school level where you're bringing in the kids from your district. But, this is a game that Abilene's won for 2 years running now. Chapman had held it for 4 years before that. What would it mean to this team in this town to take that back on Friday night?
Well, I think just for us, it means, we pick up win number 2 and get a little momentum going into week 3. It's not going to make our season if we win this game, and it's certainly not going to break our season if we lose this game. But, we want to take that next step on Friday night, and we want to come out and get better. And, our goal is to be playing that last weekend, on Thanksgiving weekend. And in order to do that, we've got to get better this Friday night.
Well, Coach, I know you've touched on a lot of the points. We've talked a little offense. We've talked a little defense. But overall, when you boil it all down, what would you say are the biggest keys to the game? What does Chapman have to do to get their first win over Abilene in 3 years?
Well, I think two things. I think we've got to win the physical battle, especially up front on both sides of the ball. And two is we got to win the turnover battle. If we can do those two things, I think I think that gives our guys a chance to be very competitive and come out with hopefully come out with a victory. And that's week in and week out, that's what we have to do. We got to be the more physical team, and we've got to win the turnover battle. If we do those two things, I like our chances.
Abilene and Chapman will kick things off down in Abilene at 7 p.m. tonight. And just as a reminder, we will have live coverage of this game on our Salina Regional Orthopedic and Sports Medicine Game of the Week. You can tune in on Salina Post or on our YouTube page with pregame coverage, including the full interviews with both Coach Grider and Coach Nix, airing for you at 6:40 p.m. We'll see you there if you tune in, but if not, we will be back to break down all three of our broadcast coverage games coming up later tonight. We'll step away, but when we return, the Salina Post Sports Friday Night Preview rolls on. You're tuned in right here on KINA. Welcome back in here on the Salina Post Sports Friday Night Preview as we are getting you set up here for another exciting week in the world of high school sports around our area. Tyler Henry joined once again here by Devin Hanney. And Devin, here's the fun part. We've got three great broadcasts for the people at home. Live audio, video commentary, the whole shebang streaming absolutely free. Let's go ahead and get into some of those games because, again, they should be really interesting matchups. And let's start in Salina on the campus of Kansas Wesleyan. Sacred Heart will be looking for a big bounce back. They've got a tall task, though, taking on the Plainville Cardinals. How do you see kind of that one shaking out as you look at the way the two teams line up against each other?
This should be a good game. I'm looking forward to this game. For Sacred Heart, you have to do a couple of things here. You have to make your biggest improvement from week 1 to week 2. Again, you're dealing with a new head coach. You're dealing with a lot of new faces and new places. Michael Matucci did so much for this team last year as a senior. Replacing him is not easy. And I don't know that you do replace a player like Matucci, but there are some guys that are trying to step up in just kind of places that they may have not expected themselves to be in, if that makes sense for Sacred Heart. But I think they played okay last week. I mean, you look at Ellsworth and the Bearcats, they lost so much. They had a great senior class, including a couple of Schramble players a year ago. Will Craven's a quarterback, could run or throw it all over the yard. They kind of switched gears, though. We saw Ellsworth go more into the running game against Sacred Heart last week, and the Knights really had trouble with that. This is a Plainville squad, though, that they have coming into the campus of Kansas Wesleyan tonight, Tyler, that is a team that you go back to 2019, and boy, that was really kind of the recent heyday of Cardinal football in Plainville. They were 10-2, had a deep run into the playoffs. Then the next year in 2020, they go to 5-4. In 2021, they go to 6-4. Now, since then, they have not had more than 4 wins in a season, so they are struggling to get above that 500 mark. This is a Cardinal squad that I think Sacred Heart can compete with tonight and should. It's also an interesting schedule for Sacred Heart this year, too, because you have a couple of schools new to the schedule that are making the move from 8-man to 11-man. Bennington and Harrington are on the schedule. I think the schedule for the Knights is kind of more numbers friendly, if you will, as far as enrollment and how many guys are on a roster compared to what they played last year.
Yeah, it should be a good one down there in Salina. Of course, our friend Adam Coulter will have the call. Pregame starts at 6:40. The game kicks off at 7 o'clock. As Devin mentioned before, we've also got our Game of the Week streaming live on Salina Post. That'll be between Abilene and Chapman. And boy, the dynamic in that game could certainly change this season. It's an Abilene program coming off their best season in a long, long time. They took a loss at the hands of a very good Clay Center team that we'll talk about a little bit later on the show. 34-7 was the final in that one. It's a Chapman team that we really, I think at least, didn't know what to fully expect out of this season. New quarterback, new head coach with Jason Grider sliding over, who you heard from earlier on the show. They really impressed me with what they were able to get done in week 1. A gritty, defensive 10-8 win over a solid Smith Center team. We'll see if they can replicate that against Abilene, but as you heard from both coaches, that rivalry means so much. And, really the interesting thing there, Chapman's got a chance to take that back. Chapman had won that game 4 years in a row. Abilene came back and won it in each of the last 2 seasons, so it's Chapman with an opportunity to get the Battle of Dickinson County back on the green side of that line. We'll see what happens there. Again, pregame coverage streaming on Salina Post. It begins at 6:40. Kickoff is set for 7 o'clock. And Devin, that leaves us just one more game to talk about, a broadcast that'll take place on Salina Post, also right here on KINA. We'll roll into the pregame for that next. It's southeast of Salina taking on Clay Center, and that has got the potential, maybe not just to be one of the best games in Class 2A, Devin, that might be one of the best games in the state of Kansas tonight.
Yeah, we'll have a detailed pregame, of course, comments coming up from Coach Mitch Gebhardt starting on the Countdown to Kickoff show at 6:30. But this is a game that has kind of evolved into a rivalry. These two teams haven't played each other a lot, but they have over the last couple of years, including a playoff matchup. It is southeast of Salina in Class 2A for football, stepping up into Class 3A against Clay Center. It is southeast of Salina going into hostile territory again for the second time in as many years. This Clay Center team has been on a roll. Of course, we all know about southeast of Salina. The last 4 seasons, they have finished the season with 1 loss. Of course, that came at the end of the year. This Clay Center team, though, again, a very, very talented senior class that they lost, including the MVP of the Shrine Bowl game, who is now at Washburn, and Brody Hayes. Last year, this was a 22-17 win for southeast of Salina. This Clay Center team, though, even though they lost a bunch of those seniors, they have some studs coming back. Names like Weston Hammond, Owen Craig, Cole Platson is a Division I baseball player. He's on his way to Oklahoma State. He is still the quarterback for this team, and this is a Tiger squad that is very, very dangerous. Check this out, Tyler. Over the last 2 years, last year the Tigers lost 2 games. One of them was to southeast of Salina. One of them was a deep run into the playoffs in the semifinals against Cheney. They went into Cheney and lost by 2 points in overtime. They could have very well been in the 3A state title game last year. You fast forward again, rewind to the year before that, 8-4. Not an impressive record, but look at the teams they lost to. They lost to southeast of Salina. They lost to Rock Creek, Wamego, and Andale. Those are the 6 losses over the last 2 seasons for this Tiger squad. It is incredible, and this game will be a banger. It is 2 teams that have reloaded. They are ready to go. And, oh, by the way, that brand-new stadium that sits in Clay County that the Tigers call the Tiger Den, the only loss they've suffered in that stadium was that loss last year to southeast of Salina. They will be ready.
They will be ready, and they will be hungry. One of the biggest challenges on SES's schedule, southeast of Salina, 44-4, dating back to 2019. It's been more than 1,790 days since southeast of Salina last lost in the regular season. Clay Center are going to pose a big challenge to that.
Keep an eye on the next 3 games for southeast of Salina. We're kind of used to cruising through the regular season and having 1 or 2 competitive games. The next 3 games for southeast of Salina are at Clay Center, at home against Beloit, and at Kingman.
Yeah, it should be a really fun stretch of games to see how this new look southeast of Salina team handles. That'll just about wrap it up for us here on the Salina Post Sports Friday night preview. But again, just a reminder, we'll have coverage of Sacred Heart taking on Plainville, the Battle of Dickinson County between Abilene and Chapman, and southeast of Salina going toe-to-toe with Clay Center on the road. Pre-game for southeast of Salina with Devin, Hanney, and the gang coming up next. You've been tuned in once again to the Salina Post Sports Friday night preview, and you caught it right here on KINA.